Hello and welcome to another show where I've got a guest speaker again. We've got the amazing Laura, and today we're going to talk about something a little bit different, but really aligns in with things I'm passionate about and helping people with chronic conditions in their business or disabilities or any challenges they face. So it's amazing to have this conversation today with Laura because we're going to get into that. But before we do, Laura, do you want to introduce yourself and who you are, what you do?
Sure. Hi. So my name is Laura Teare Jones. I'm a hormone and mindset coach, a podcaster, fierce PMDD and women's health advocate, and champion for women in business.
I love that. And it's such an important thing to do, isn't it? And help women be aware of these kind of things. Because I think people suffer for so long not knowing what's going on. And actually it's something that's piqued my interest recently is I started tracking my cycle and trying to be more in tune with my body and look after my body because, well, it does amazing things for us every day. So why not?
Yeah.
And is that why you kind of came into this journey for that reason? What actually brought you to do what you're doing?
Well, I live with PMDD, so that's premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And I'll just tell you a little bit more about what that actually is, because unfortunately, no one seems to have heard of it. So, PMDD is a cyclical hormone-based mood disorder. It's a sensitivity in the brain to hormonal fluctuations within the body. So, PMDD actually affects 1 in 20 women and people who have periods. But because it's period shame and it's mental health stigma, it just doesn't get spoken about. And the symptoms are very extreme psychological and emotional symptoms, also some physical symptoms. And the thing about PMDD is the symptoms will present in the build up to the menstrual period, and then they subside once bleeding starts. But I wasn't diagnosed with this until I was 28 years old, which, as you can imagine, that was a very long time to live with the condition, not knowing what was going on, not knowing why this was happening to me. And after years of kind of self-doubt and also medical gaslighting, to have an answer made me realize, wow, this isn't my fault. It's not something that I could have ever done anything to deserve. But
Yeah.
from then I've had to really do a lot of learning, a lot of healing. I've had to work on myself to learn to just live better with what is essentially an incurable chronic health condition. And yeah, it's something that I will talk about all day, every day. When I set up my business, I did make a promise to myself that every time I talk about my business, what I do, or if I host an event, PMDD would always be included, because it just doesn't have the awareness that it should have.
Yeah, I actually had heard it, but only because of someone who literally said the same as you. She went through it with the symptoms, the struggles, and it wasn't diagnosed for a while. She's quite young as well. I think she's about the same age as me, and she was only diagnosed a few years ago. I'm 30, and so she's obviously struggled as well, literally since she was a teenager, from when periods begin, I guess. So it
Yeah.
was a massive challenge for her as well, and I had no awareness of it until she started sharing it with her business community as well. She was a client of mine. So it did actually make me aware. And then I had another business friend that said, oh, I struggled with it. She doesn't anymore because she doesn't have periods anymore. But when she opened up about it, I was like, oh, this goes on a lot more than people realise. And we have had Jan Ockenden come and talk about menstrual cycles and how we can use them to help us with running a business and navigate our way through our cycles. And it really is, it does have an impact. And is that something you went and did when you discovered this? What did your journey look like afterwards in terms of managing and coping with what was happening, and especially in terms of your business when you decided to start up this business? What kind of things did you have to navigate, and how did you overcome the challenges?
Well, it was definitely a journey. So I found out about PMDD and got diagnosed in 2018. And I spent the next year kind of just reading and learning and reading and learning and listening to every podcast, read every book, all about not just PMDD, but periods and the menstrual cycle. And I learned so much. I learned that like the menstrual cycle isn't just a period. That's like, you know, there's
Yeah.
all these other weeks that things are happening in your body. And I remember just being like, why didn't I learn this in school? And it was a huge like light bulb moment. And then we went into lockdown, and I think a lot of people were, you know, taking on hobbies at that time, when then, you know, when you could do the 30-minute walk with your friend, and people were like baking and making banana bread and all that. It was that era of lockdown. And I decided, you know what, I want to set up a podcast and share my experiences of PMDD. And so I did that, and I had people come on the podcast. And at the time, I was a weight loss coach, and I had these two amazing parts of my life. I loved being a coach. I was kind of outgrowing the weight loss conversation. I was a bit bored of talking about weight all the time. And yeah, I just becoming more and more and more passionate about women's health. And the more I learned, the kind of more frustrated I was getting. And yeah, I think then we got to kind of the end of 2020, and I was made redundant. And it was just kind of like obvious what I needed to do. You know, I had all this coaching experience. I had like 8 years coaching experience. I had this newfound passion, and it was kind of like, oh, I just need to combine the two. Obviously, that's what I need to do. But I think as anyone who's self-employed knows, it's not as straightforward as that. And I think even when the answer is so obvious, it was kind of a time when I was just like petrified of what I was doing. And I was so nervous about kind of little things like, oh, do I need an accountant? And, you know, all those questions that when you go self-employed, you're like, I don't know this. But now I would say most things are Googleable, I suppose. But I remember at the time just being so nervous. And yeah, and then I set up my business. But shortly after that, I actually got pregnant, and I was very poorly during the pregnancy. So I spent the pregnancy really just doing enough to get by. I didn't really do a lot to grow my business. It was just kind of like, just do what you can when I'm in and out of hospital and being really poorly. But even during that time, I could see that like my hormones were just such a huge effect on me. And obviously, after giving birth, my hormones were even more of an effect on me. You know, I think it was a huge time for fluctuating hormones. And of course, my condition then was worse. But what I've really learned is actually to kind of lean into it. And I think, you know, with you asking what I've had to do to kind of set up my business, I think the best thing that I've learned is to meet my hormones where they are. My hormones are normal. There's no issue with them. The issue that my body has is the sensitivity to them, and that's what causes symptoms. So I've had to just really learn to love my hormones and to track my cycle, for example, know which phase of my cycle I'm in. And for anyone who hasn't heard of doing this before or is a bit unsure of where to start, I would advise looking into season cycle. So that is when you have like the spring, summer, autumn, winter of your cycle. It makes it really easy to kind of conceptualize it and again meet yourself where you are. So now I know that when I'm in my autumn, I don't tend to meet with new clients. I try and schedule all my new clients for my spring and my summer when I'm just full of positivity and I've got that kind of go-getting attitude. And when I'm in my summer, I am like all about the networking events. I'm all about putting myself out there because that's what works best for my hormones. It's really harnessing the power of them. Also working on my mindset. And yeah, just doing everything I can to push myself. I'm very passionate about self-compassion over everything else as well. So even in business and outside of business, for me, it's always about kind of be kind to yourself first and other things will follow. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. I've just gone off on a total tangent there.
Everybody does though, because I think when you're telling your story though, that's it. And I love that though. And it's important to share stories as well. It just helps people get a connection, an idea of what the pictures look like for you, which I think is important. Like I relate to, like I'm in my, I'd say spring now, and my energy, I love this feeling and I want more people to really, like you say, lean into that. So I know that come like next week, I'll be at, like, you know, in summer, But then after that, it's going to date, my hormone's going to change, and I will absolutely lean into that. Like, I used to be afraid of taking days off because then I'm behind on work. Now I don't see it as behind on work. It's like step back to like spring forward, like quite a fun, but it really is about that, because I step back first and then I leap forward, and I find I'm so much more productive because I'm more in control of things. And this is coming from someone who I don't even have a period because I'm on the contraceptive pill, but I do feel my hormones do still fluctuate. They do say that they don't as much with that because it's so controlled. But for me, I don't know why, for some reason, it does fluctuate up and down. But knowing that and understanding that really has been powerful. And in terms of running your business, dealing with something chronic, has it been something that you've always been open talking about, or is it something that you felt like you had to hide at first? Because I know, like, not for me personally, but my family situation with like health and my own mental health, I hid for so long, not sharing the full story of what's going on behind the scenes. And people see this picture, don't they? But actually, what's really happening, they're surprised when they find out. But in my own journey, I feel so comfortable now saying, this is what's going on, that it's okay, especially if I kind of let myself lean in and move through it, then share it and not share it while I'm feeling terrible, which is really important. But for you, has that been something you've done?
Yeah, well, I remember just before I set up my podcast, so this time I wasn't self-employed, I made an Instagram account for my kind of PMDD story, but I kept it anonymous, so I didn't have my name or my picture on there. And I was kind of wrestling with that because I really wanted to raise awareness, but I didn't know if I wanted to have the spotlight on me because it is something so raw and so vulnerable. And then I was toying with the idea of a podcast, and I kind of thought, how can I do a podcast anonymously when my voice is on it? And I guess I was getting frustrated as well, because I remember thinking this was at a time when there was a lot of stuff on the news in Wales about the curriculum changing and reproductive health and how that would look on the curriculum. And at the time, what that meant was schools could pick and choose what they covered in terms of reproductive health. And that really wound me up, because I was kind of like, I don't get to choose PMDD, so why should anyone choose what is taught and what isn't? And it also sets a bit of a precedent, doesn't it? Because if teachers aren't confident in all of the subjects, they're obviously going to shy away from the more kind of tricky subjects like PMDD or endometriosis, and they're going to want to cover the general stuff, which, you know, is covered anyway. And I just remember being so frustrated. But then I thought, if I'm going to make an impact, if I'm going to actually make changes and help to raise awareness, how can I shy away? I need to have a face, and awareness needs to have a face. People need to know that PMDD exists, and it exists in like everyday people. It's not just something that affects people who are already depressed or anything like that. Like, I'm quite a happy, positive person, and PMDD rips that away from me. But people need to see that. So I think, yes, initially I was very kind of, I don't know about this. But then after setting up the podcast and putting my face on Instagram, I found it really empowering. I got lots of messages from people saying like, I can't believe you too, or I can't believe this, or, you know, you've really inspired me to speak to my doctor. And I just thought, yes, this is what people need. And then after that, I started doing kind of like magazine articles and radio and stuff like that, which has been really cool. But it's still, even to this day, whenever I do anything where I'm speaking to a new audience, I always have that kind of feeling where I'm like, I'm talking about periods and I'm talking about mental health, and not everyone is ready for that conversation. Especially, I mean, when I said a minute ago that I'll always talk about PMDD when I talk about my business, I stood up at a networking event last week, and I described what I do, and I said I'm a fierce PMDD advocate, and this is me, blah blah blah. And then a man on the front row went, I have a question, what's PMDD, please? And I thought, oh bless you, you're going to regret asking that question. And as I started talking about like periods and mental health, I could just see like the glaze over on his face as he was like, oh God, what have I started here? But he needs to know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming that, like, because we've already had a podcast around not the same topic that we're talking now, but we have had a podcast just around cycles and your kind of feminine power, basically. And I bet someone's tuned into this and turned it off already, not another period talk, but it's not a period talk. And actually, like you say, I too wasn't educated on my spring, summer, all of this. I had no idea that's how my cycle looked and worked, and that I could really lean into that, because we were just taught that you bleed once a month and you use sanitary products. And even like, so John Ockenden, who did our previous podcast around this, like, it's even the way we say that they're sanitary products, it's like this idea of being dirty in our minds. So people don't want to talk about it for that reason as well, or because there is more advocates, I'd say, like yourselves now. People are just like, oh, I don't want to hear that, but I think it's time we opened our ears and listen to it, because actually, if we do, it really can benefit us, and it does make a difference. And when we do that as well and lean in, like you say, not just with like as women and our menstrual cycles and PMDD if you have it, or endometriosis, whatever it looks like for women in particular, but other conditions for our health as well. If we lean in, then we can work with that better, and it's going to have a greater impact. I'm a full advocate. If you'd have told me that I was going to say this years ago, I'd have been like, whatever. But it's true, because that is how I work now. If I am unwell, I will not hesitate to rearrange what I've got booked in. And I used to feel guilt around that, and shame, I guess. Like, I can't be like, I'm queen of business organisation. So I actually shared a post on this. So am I unorganised for rearranging? No, because if in that moment I'm unwell, then actually serves the person on the other end better if I go away and rest and then come back to it later, because it's going to be better for that client, or a collaboration like us having this conversation. It's better if I'm in good energy. So this is why I'm recording in a time when I'm in greater energy, because it is beneficial. What would be your advice to women out there that maybe struggle with chronic health conditions, whether that's PMDD or maybe endometriosis or any other conditions that are impacting them, and they are in business? And sometimes I feel like as women, these conditions can hold us back. What would be your advice to any women like that are going through that?
I think the first thing I would say is self-compassion over everything. So if you're living with a chronic health condition, if you're living with a mind that isn't always kind to you, you must practice self-compassion to almost try and counterbalance that. So self-compassion over everything. Your business will not exist without you. Your business might be your baby. I know mine is, but actually you must come first. So the temptation can be to push on and just think, oh, I'll just do that podcast. I'll just do this. I'll just do that. It's only one thing, and I'm sure I can handle it. But I would always ask you to just check in with yourself and just ask, if I do this and it pushes me over my limit, what's going to be the impact on tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday? Is it better if I just cancel this one thing today, take the afternoon, and hopefully that can restore my energy for the next few days? So it's almost about being proactive, meeting yourself where you are. Anything that you can do to just help yourself is going to be beneficial as well. So I would say, somebody in business, stand in your strength. So I know that not everybody who lives with PMDD wants to be a hormone and mindset coach. I totally get that. Equally, and I almost cringe to say this, but I'm going to say it, PMDD, as I've said, is my story, and actually it's my superpower, because without it, I wouldn't be recording this podcast. I wouldn't be self-employed. PMDD is what makes me me, and I would say that to everyone living with a chronic condition. You might not want to talk about it, you might not want to share it, but the truth is it impacts you, it affects you, and it does shape you. So do lean into that, and yeah, let that be a part of your story. And I think, I guess the other thing I would just say is get the support when you need it. So if you're running a business and you know that you love the stuff that you do, so whether that's being a business coach or a holistic therapist, if you can have support with the things that you don't enjoy, or the things that are a bit of a drain on you, whether that be that you hire a virtual assistant or you collaborate with somebody and do skill swaps, anything you can do to make your life easier, and any help that you can get, any outsourcing that you can do it. If it means that you have to subscribe to Calendly to make your life a little bit easier and pay the subscription fee, just do it. Just invest that little bit of money if it means that your business is going to thrive, but also it's not going to be a detriment to your well-being. Just do anything that makes your life easier.
I love that. I'm so aligned with me. It really is. And it's interesting what you said there about it being a superpower, because I started saying this to my husband because he started with one condition, hypermobility joint disorder, causes pain, dislocations for him. He's had surgery after surgery. And then his list has got longer. So he already knew that he had dyslexia from being a teenager. And then I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. I think he shouldn't, because I do use it in my story now. Before I didn't, I kind of hid it, but then it shows why he's not, on the face of everything I do, because he's there doing the things at home that he needs to do. He has his place, and but he is a big part of my story, and he's added on his list over the years, and the most recent being type 2 diabetes, and he's now been referred to autism and ADHD assessments. But I have actually said to him, it's a good thing and makes so much sense, because with his hypermobility condition, usually they can't keep, people that suffer with this can't keep them going. It sometimes can keep them, and it does him, but not all the time, can keep them bedbound. They struggle in pain a lot, and it's never been something I could quite understand why he can keep on going even though he's in pain. And I've quite recently realised it's his ADHD being his superpower. And I said, like, you wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for your brain that is actually, I don't want to say pushing him. I mean, it does sometimes. And I've got to kind of say to him, look, listen to your body. And it does sometimes, but it keeps him going so that he can do more. And that then has an impact on him that makes him feel better, in terms of how he provides for us as a family. Because the way he does it is he cooks our dinner, washes our clothes. He's there for me. I outsource to him to make my life easy. He just, at this moment in time, I don't have my mobile phone because I had a call just as I was about to go into a meeting. So I gave it to him. Can you just take this call? Which was actually for therapy for our son, who's also neurodiverse. So doing that, having that as a superpower, I think is such a beneficial thing. It really, really is. And if someone had just said to me previously when I struggled with my mental health, what you've just said about self-compassion, oh, wow, would that have changed so much? Because I'd never heard that back then. And hearing it the way you put it then was just amazing as a bit of advice. And I hope people feel that too when they listen. If people want to come and listen to your podcast, what's it called and where do we find it?
My podcast is called My Hormones, My Health, and it's on Spotify and all of the usual streaming sites. And it's also on my website as well, which is tearjonescoaching.co.uk.
Amazing. We will link it in the show notes and description for you, so you can click straight through and have a listen, especially if you're interested in hearing more on this conversation from Laura. Where else can we find you on social media?
So you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram as just Laura Teare Jones. And I've also got pages for Teare Jones Coaching and pages for Get Shit Done Club as well, which is my networking group.
Oh, I love that. We all need a bit of that sometimes, don't we? We do co-working in one of my memberships because it's so good to come together and do it, isn't it? Like you say, and like you said earlier, if you have someone doing it with you, it does have an impact. So I'm guessing that's why you created that, which is amazing. So my final question, which I ask all my guests, is if you had one tip for being organised in your business, don't do that face. What would it be? I know it puts you on the spot, but what would it be?
Okay, actually, I do have something, and it's been really helpful recently. So I don't just have one to-do list. I have two, which I know sounds a little bit kind of OTT, but I have a do list and a delay list. And on my do list, it's this needs to be done today, tomorrow, the latest, the things that are urgent. And on my delay list, I have things that I need to do, but they're not too time sensitive. So I have a to-do list and a delay list. And then sometimes I have a bit of a wish list as well, which is kind of like, oh, I want to put that page on my website, but it's kind of like, well, one day, but not this week because I haven't got time. So sometimes 3 to-do lists can be helpful as well.
I love that, and I've done very similar in the past. I kind of have one at the minute, but I went through a phase. I always change what I'm doing, all these different techniques, but I did go through a phase where I had tasks that are like high energy and take a lot more time. Then I had the tasks that you just need to get done, like it needs to be done. Then I had stuff that I outsource, which is usually passed to, sorry, Dan, to the husband. And then I'd have stuff that, what was the fourth list? There was a fourth one. Clearly the one that I never did because I forgot what it was called, but there was a fourth one, and it was like quadrants on my page, so then I could really, that was it. It was low energy stuff. So this is stuff like if I did have a headache and I had to cancel appointments, I could still do something like late. I wouldn't recommend it all the time, but like sat in bed, I could do it on my mobile and pick it up and put it down as much as I needed to be. There was no pressure to get it done. So those kind of tasks as well, which I think is handy to have. But I love the idea of having a wish list to-do list because there's always nice to-dos that I want to get done, and I procrastinate on doing them. But it's like sometimes if I just do my to-do list first, and then I can go to the night, pick a wish off that list.
People talk about like eating the frog, don't they? Where they say like do the worst things first and then treat yourself afterwards. And sometimes I will do something off my to-do list, something urgent that I really don't want to do. I'll do that. And then I might treat myself to something off the wish list, like, putting a new page on my website or something that is probably a bit of a shiny distraction that doesn't really need doing. So yeah, totally that.
Yeah, but with housework.
Yeah.
I did a 15-minute housework blitz in one room, rewarding myself with a business task. Moved on to the other room, rewarding myself. And it sounds weird to work that way. It's because I can get motivated about the business, but housework, not so much. And this was actually because my husband was ill. Boy, could you tell he was ill that day in my house, because it was not the way it usually looks when I'm working and he keeps it. It's like a magic cleaning fairy. My husband, and I wish everybody else would have a cleaning fairy too, because it is easier. But yeah, you could definitely tell. So I had to adjust, and that was my way of doing it. Anything you would like to add before we finish up?
No, I think, just again, self-compassion over everything.
I love that. Thank you so much. This has been an amazing talk.
Thank you so much.